This right here is my step-by-step blueprint on how to get rid of your nervy arm and shoulder pain in only 10 minutes a day. And no, we're not going to be doing any exercises because I know you already tried that and chances are it didn't work, which is why you're still looking for another solution. So make sure to grab a piece of paper and a pen to take notes and let's get started. Now, the main reason why you're not going to see any kind of exercises inside of this blueprint is because exercises are not designed to get rid of your pain quickly. They're actually designed to keep your pain away. Another way to think about this is exercises are more of a preventative medicine, a preventative therapy, which is also why it takes you 2 to 3 months to actually feel results when doing exercises to treat your pain. Just think about this for a second, right? If all of your nervy arm and shoulder pain is coming from compression in the chest, in the neck, in the biceps maybe, then why are you strengthening the weaker muscles in your upper back, in your core, maybe even in the glutes? The reason why is because by strengthening these weaker muscles, they will be able to help fight off that tightness that's already happening inside of the chest, inside of the neck, and therefore begin to prevent that pain from happening because it's now winning that fight, that strength fight, as you will. But do you see the problem here? You're trying to strengthen a weak muscle while one is already super tight and creating that compression in the first place. And that is why the key to this simple 10-minute blueprint is going to be self-massage techniques. Because self-massage techniques are the best way to not only get rid of the tight muscles or help loosen them up, but it's also going to help release that tight fascia around it as well. And the key here is to actually work on the opposite muscles that your doctors are trying to strengthen, or to simply target the muscles that are creating that compression in the first place. And I want to show you which muscles you need to release right now, starting off with day one, and that's going to be the neck muscles, starting off with the SCM and the scalenes. Now here you can see that we have the SCM, also known as the sternocleidomastoid, and the scalenes, which are these three muscles. These are your two primary neck muscles that can create some kind of compression, either directly or indirectly, on your nerves and blood vessels, resulting in your nervy arm and shoulder pain, also known as thoracic outlet syndrome. Now, the reason why we want to target these muscles specifically is because, as you can see here, the nerves, this yellow piece that is now highlighted in pink, these nerves go in between your scalenes, which means if those muscles end up getting tight, especially the front and the middle one, which is very common thanks to our daily habits, then those muscles can end up squeezing on those nerves and even the blood vessels, which you can see here too, which will then create that tingly, nervy arm and shoulder pain that goes all the way down into the hands. Now, the SCM specifically, it can actually contribute to this as well because this giant muscle actually helps pull the head forward, almost like forward head posture basically, which then compresses the muscles like these scalenes because it goes along with it. So if the SCM gets tight, it kind of pulls everything along with it, which then creates compression. Or if the scalenes get tight, thanks to heavy breathing with the chest, or again, just basic everyday work, then that can also create some kind of compression resulting in your pain. Now, obviously, these muscles are located on the side of the neck. You can see right here, you have one on each side that you can definitely work on. And there's several techniques you can do when it comes to the neck muscles, with the two most basic techniques being a simple warm-up, where you're just going to grab the tissues, pull it out, and then repeat going all the way up. If you need to help kind of pop the muscle out, you can rotate the other way, which then pops the muscle out and allows you to grab it. And again, the whole idea of this is just simply warm up the muscle about 30 seconds to a minute. And then you can do what's called micro movements by simply just looking for the most tender spots, grabbing it, and then just pretty much working it on that one spot by pulling it, pushing it, going up and down, and just massaging it again for another 30 to 60 seconds. Now, when it comes to the scaling specifically, you'd want to start off with something like stripping or strokes when it comes to this muscle, but you want to make sure you're going from the head down towards the body. in order to avoid any blood flow going up and therefore giving you any headaches, something like that. So the idea of this is that we're going to simply pull straight down the neck, again, looking for the most tender spots. Now, there are a lot of nerves and blood vessels that go through the neck, but in my experience, from everything I've done, it's very rare for you to actually hit those. And if you do, you can simply move to the left or right to continue on the muscle. Trust me when I say you'll know the difference between tight muscles and a nerve. You will feel the difference. And on top of that, we can still do some micro movements after you're done warming it up with those strokes. Again, just going to go back and forth to side. Here I'm using an open palm just because it is the neck and we still want to be a little sensitive around it. But if you want to add more pressure, go ahead and try to grab some tissues, push it towards the back of the neck, and then press in a little bit. That's going to help you kind of move the tissues and slide them while adding a little extra pressure. Now, the goal for each of these treatments is to work them for about 10 minutes in total, so 5 minutes on each side, which means about 2.5 minutes per muscle. And again, if you divide that in half one more time, it's about a minute, a little more than a minute of doing each technique on each muscle in order to hit that 10-minute mark. Now, day 2, we are actually jumping into the chest because the first 2 muscles here were going to be the pec major and the pec minor. So in order to get the major real quick, we're just going to highlight this and hide it. And now we can see both. So here we have the pec minor and then we have the pec major. And when it comes to, again, direct compression on your nerves and blood vessels, it is the pec minor that is responsible for that. Because here we can see behind this anterior deltoid, it actually attaches to the scapula. You can see that in this bottom left corner here, where it says scapula. And what this means is when this muscle gets tight, when the pec minor shortens and creates that compression, what's happening here is that it's pulling that scapula forward because it's attached to it. And when it does that, it creates that compression on those nerves and blood vessels right behind it. This is also why your doctors are having you strengthen these muscles in the back here. Like, we gotta hide this real quick. Here we go. Like these rhomboids, for example, or the traps, because this is going to help pull that scapula back, fighting off that tight pec minor and therefore helping you, hopefully, decompress those nerves and blood vessels. But again, they're trying to do this by going at it from a weak muscle as opposed to just attacking it directly first by loosening the tight muscles. Now, when it comes to the pec major specifically, this muscle can again create some kind of compression indirectly because it may also pull everything around, pull the shoulders joint more specifically, which then can create some kind of compression. But the pec major also has what's called trigger points in them. And trigger points, which are found in every muscle pretty much, these trigger points specifically actually feel like thoracic outlet syndrome, even though they are not. So what this means is a trigger point in the chest, somewhere in the, let's just say, nipple area, can actually create pain into the arm and all the way down into the finger, all thanks to that fascia system that's wrapped around it and those fascia lines that go from the hand all the way into the chest. So again, when you are working on these 2 muscles, you can do the same techniques on both of them. We warm them up either with a foam roller or a small ball, and then we can actually do micro movements on the most tender spot, which is most likely going to be a trigger point, which is also going to help loosen the muscles and get rid of those at the same time. So micro movements and slow warm-ups or just warming up the muscle for 1 minute on each technique, 1 minute, which will give you about 8 to 10 minutes, give or take. Oh, and by the way, if you actually want to go through this step by step with me on a timer as I explain everything and go through more techniques than just the ones I'm showing you, plus a few additional bonus muscles that aren't tied to TOS directly, but other related issues like headaches and all things like that. And make sure to check out my new program, 10-Minute Quick Fix for TOS, only at trainingmassage.com. I'm even going to throw in my TOS Trigger Point Playbook for you, which is a $20 value. absolutely free. Go check it out right now before those prices increase. All right, day 3, we're actually going to have a shorter session this time, and that's because we're working on the clavicle and the subclavius. Now, the subclavius is this tiny little muscle right here that is highlighted in yellow, while the clavicle is the one that is highlighted in green. And the subclavius, again, can create some kind of compression on those nerves and blood vessels right underneath it by getting tight and either pulling that first rib up or the clavicle down, which will then squeeze on those nerves and blood vessels. This is why you see those first rib releases all the time as well. It's not just because of this subclavius, by the way, but it's also because of these scalenes that also attach to it. FYI, that's why they're so important to release. But with that said, the subclavius, we're going to be doing 2 techniques, same techniques. Unfortunately, kind of boring here, but they are very, very effective, which is why I am giving them to you. First one, again, warming it up. The best way to do this, roll the shoulder forward and rest it on something, not holding it up like I am. When you hold it up without resting it, these muscles contract. When you can rest it on something, just let the body relax, the muscles relax, and it's easier to get into the tissues. So don't hold it up like this, rest it on something. But when it's rested, this should feel loose and you should be able to get underneath that clavicle a little more and just start warming it up for about a minute. From here, you can then do micro movements by just going back and forth and side to side on it. Again, trying to get underneath that clavicle and almost trying to push that subclavius away from the clavicle. On top of that, we can also work on the clavicle itself. Again, keeping that arm forward, I want to go inside of the clavicle, behind it almost, to try to loosen those tissues here. Here, you want to be a lot more sensitive though, because there's a lot more nerves and blood vessels that you can probably run into. So go nice and slow, stay on that clavicle, and just think again, trying to separate it from the rest of the tissues, trying to dig it out almost. Go from the top and go from the bottom, working on that clavicle as well. All right, up next, we have the biceps, the triceps, and the coracobrachialis. Now, starting off with the biceps and triceps, again, a lot of nerves and blood vessels go through here. Tightness in the fascia system gets locked in here because we're constantly bending our elbows all the time and bringing them in front of us to do things like I'm doing now. When we do this, these muscles are technically contracting. You can feel it contract. It may help you get stronger, right, per se, to lift you 100 pounds, but it's still technically contracting, which makes all these muscles tight, especially the biceps. And when that happens, it can create that pain, can create some kind of compression on those nerves and blood vessels. But the one muscle that is deeper to that, which is actually technically a shoulder muscle, is the coracobrachialis. And the reason why it's a shoulder muscle is because it simply helps elevate the arm and even rotate it inward a little bit, which again is something we do every day, which is how it can get tight. If you have tightness in the upper bicep specifically, maybe even a little bit in the lower shoulder, but in this area, this might actually be the coracobrachialis, the deeper bicep muscle, which is creating that compression in the first place, and the one muscle you need to target by warming it up again, warm it up, move it around, grab the muscle, pull it away, things like that. And then you can do micro movements by going back and forth and side to side. Again, to get through the biceps, because I'm holding my arm up, these muscles are contracting. But if I was able to rest it, like on my arm, the muscles can now feel all jiggly and relax, which allows you to get deeper through them without hitting the top surface muscle. It's a little trick you can do. Make sure you're supporting the muscles, especially if you want to get deeper into them. Now, day 5, we are actually going to be working on the forearm muscles, the extensors, and the flexors. Again, the reason why those muscles can get tight, those nerves can get squeezed, and if those nerves are squeezed on one end, it's going to feel that pull on the other side, which may result in some kind of pain. As well, we use these muscles every single day doing whatever our job is. It doesn't matter since everything's done in front of us. Whatever we're doing is going to make these muscles tight. So the more they get tight, the tighter that fascia system gets, the tighter the entire system gets, which then can result in some kind of TOS-like pain. So again, when you are massaging out these muscles, warming them up, you can use a ball, which I kind of like to use better, which I actually have right here. Perfect. You kind of warm it up, going back and forth and side to side. I can place it on top of a surface and just roll it to work on both sides as well in order to warm up not only the tissues but the deeper fascia. And then micro movements back and forth and side to side on that one tender spot that you find in both muscles, and do that for a minute on each muscle in order to get about 10 minutes. Don't forget, all these techniques and a lot more can be found in my 10-minute TOS quick fix. The link for that is in the description below. Or now that you're done with those massage techniques, now is the perfect time to go do those exercises, because once those tissues are released, the weaker muscles actually have a fighting chance to get stronger. If you want to learn the best exercises to do and what people actually think about when they're doing this, then make sure to check out the video popping up in the corner. I'll see you over there.